All right, so me and Giuseppe got to meet last summer, and then what came along is I thought it'd be great to do a workshop on sober spaces at Pride. And lo and behold, Giuseppe submitted a workshop as well, and we had a lovely conversation, and we decided that we would combine a workshop together, where I would talk a little bit about my personal experience coming into the community and Pride and what all that meant to me, and how I kind of moved around and got sober, and how it became a little bit challenging for me to come back into Pride as I used to view it. So let's begin. So of course, this is mature content, so this might stir up some emotions for you or whatnot. So if you need to, step outside or go speak with somebody, there's tons of people from Regina Pride and FCP here that can give you a hand. If you have any questions, certainly we can answer them on the spot, but if you want to reserve them until the end, that's fine. But it's definitely, we can treat this a bit as of a conversation. If you have something that you pipe up on or want to raise your hand or something, then I think that's all right as well. And yeah, just make sure you take care of yourself. All right, so some nice questions to start. So how many of us love Pride? Yay. Oh, yay! How many of us love to have a drink or two? Yay. Oh, a few of us, yeah, oh, I know, trust me. And how many of us have had to drink too many? Oh, yes, definitely, yes, how many last night, right? Yeah, well, it's good times, So for a lot of us, for coming out, we came out, in our early years, we started experimenting with our sexuality before we started coming out, right? And a lot of that sometimes got involved with, drinking or doing drugs in our teenage years or whatnot. And, back in my day, there wasn't a lot of support systems or GSAs or anything like that that kind of gave me that support and that comfort to be able to come out when I was young. So I wasn't able to come out until after school, after high school. And when I came out, there wasn't a lot of places to go that weren't the bar to be able to kind of socialize and stuff like that. So, what was it? It was clubbing at night, right? And who doesn't like clubbing at night? I mean, I certainly did love it. And why did we go? We went there to go meet like-minded people. We went there to go socialize, and we went there to go enjoy a cocktail or two, or three, or four, or five.
And maybe hook up.
Nighttime party shenanigans. Oh yeah, so I don't know how many of you have been to Winnipeg, but this is Gio's Club and Bar. It was a very wonderful members club, and it was a members club. It was not-for-profit, kind of like Q here. And you'd want to go, and you would want to go there to meet like-minded people. You'd want to go there to build a community, to make friends. But of course, that always involved drinking, right? I mean, most people that would go, it's just what you did. So there's my first Pride. So there I am, look at, aren't I adorable? Yeah. Yeah, so after going to Gio's and making friends with everybody there, I started working at Gio's. So what would I do? I would go there to party, I would work there, and then finally Pride came along, and it was this wonderful, magical experience. I went from going out to the bar at night to being able to go to the Manitoba Legislative with thousands of people out in the daytime, and being able to actually be myself out there in public and have all this wonderful support. And I realized that the LGBT life is not only at night, it could be during the day as well. So what does Pride mean to everyone here? Community, belonging, friendship. But when you're going out to the bar all the time, and you start creating behavioral patterns, and start doing the drinking and the partying and everything like that, you certainly take that into the Pride scene itself, or at least I did. So as time goes on, I worked in the bar, I socialized in the bar, I pre-gamed to go to the bar, and it really started to become a common behavioral pattern. It became an addiction. In the community, you start to create social expectations of yourself. You start to think people perceive you in a certain way and how you are expected to behave. You start to develop unhealthy behavioral patterns. People start to expect that of you so much that they do articles of you in the newspaper. So this is what Pride became for me. Yeah, City's Pride Festival, ready to party. I mean, trust me, I love the body painting, I do. I did it more than once, and I was in the newspaper several times. So I started to create this idea of this is who I'm supposed to be. I'm always supposed to be the outgoing one. I'm always supposed to be the one to do all the tequila shots. I'm always supposed to be the one up on stage. And I do love that. I do love the attention in a lot of ways. But the hangovers? Yeah, so behaviors that started. Hangovers, blackouts, promiscuity. Not that there's anything wrong with that. And addictions, that's really what it came down to. It became addiction. It started to reduce your amount of freedom from you to be able to do other things in your life to just doing a certain set of expected behaviors. So Pride 360, I was really lucky because I got to move out of Winnipeg and move across Canada to Calgary, Vancouver, Australia, New Zealand. And each time I would think, okay, this time I'm going to clean up my act. This time I'm going to change things. And sometimes I would for brief little periods, but when you move to a new city, where do you go to socialize? Once again, I would be going to the bar scene. That's the only thing that I knew. I was really lucky in Vancouver because there was community and health initiative for men. So these other environments where you could go and meet people and do other activities than just drink your face off. Finally, there was a time for a wake-up call. So the behaviors got worse. Physical health issues started. It got so bad that I was drinking 2 bottles of wine a night just to go to bed. And my body started to reject food. So I would try to eat, and it would just want to come on right back up. I went to the doctor. I was living in New Zealand, and he said, well, you have a choice. You either get an ulcer, or you quit drinking. So it was pretty black and white for me then. I didn't have a lot of money to go for surgery. But the real thing was actually, I developed a little bit of alopecia on my face. I started to lose hair loss in my beard, and that actually was more of a physical appearance reaction that drove me to change than the health issues inside. So it's funny, a little bit of narcissism and vanity for you might work. The emotional health issues, oh my. It's like there's a cloud of doom that hangs over you all the time. When you're constantly waking up with a hangover, every day is like you're waking up with the flu. And you have to wake up, you have to get ready, go to work, and you have this sense of embarrassment of what happened the night before. You wouldn't quite remember exactly what happened, and people would kind of remind you. And at every time you wonder, well, what else did I do? What else did I do? And what aren't they telling me? So finally, like I said, I went to the doctor, and I smartened up, and I decided that, it's now or never, and I was really lucky because I had a lot of things in my life that gave me the support to be able to become sober. Yoga and meditation. I cannot say enough about it. I was actually really lucky. I was doing yoga for many years, even while I was drinking. And at times I would go sober briefly for a couple weeks or maybe for a few months, and these wonderful experiences would happen while I would be practicing yoga, while my mind would be centered, and I started to create these little pockets of memory that I could have that life experience again. I'm pretty sure the only reason why I was able to survive the last few years of my alcoholism was by practicing yoga, was actually going and trying to keep my body as healthy as possible. But I did create it into a similar kind of behavioral pattern where I would go, drink as much as I could, and then the next morning wake up and then go to yoga and flush it all out of my system. So although it was kind of a bit of a crutch and a way to help me, I don't necessarily recommend you to do that, but I'm pretty sure that that's what got me through. I was really lucky to have a support system of friends and family. My family's always been there for me, maybe because a lot of them have their own drug and alcohol addiction problems, and they've experienced it with their parents and stuff. But I was really lucky that my friends were all able to understand what I was doing and the choices that I was making. The key thing, I think, also was a change in my work environment. I had been in hospitality my whole life, so I worked at night as well. So when you're a waiter and you're working until 11 p.m. at night or so, there's not much for you to really go do. I mean, for other people during the day when you're working till about 5, you can still go to the gym or, go to an event or something like that. But really in hospitality, most people, you sit down and you have a drink after work. A few drinks goes into the late night bar, into the lines, into the partying, into the dancing. Dancing's great, by the way. Sorry, I didn't mean to make that sound like a negative. So I was really lucky to have all those support systems and able to figure myself out. Not everybody does, which is quite unfortunate. While I was in New Zealand, I didn't really get involved with the LGBT community too much. I stopped going to the prides, stopped going out to the bars, and it was a little bit easier for me because I didn't have a lot of friends there that would create the peer pressure for me to go. But then I finally decided to move back to Canada. And I love living in Vancouver. I love living in Calgary and Winnipeg. I had a lot of friends here. And I planned my trip back to coincide with Vancouver Pride. And all I could think was, how am I going to do this? How am I going to go back to Vancouver during Pride and stay sober? I've been sober for 3 years now. How am I going to do this? So even after 3 years of being sober, how am I going to be able to do this in Vancouver? I don't know how many of us have been to Vancouver, but I mean, Davie Street, my goodness, it would be the 1181 slide down to the O, it'd be right down the bars all the way to the end. And again, I'm not saying that there's anything wrong with that. Go to party if you can, if you want to. Be safe when you do it. But how was I going to stay true to who I'd become? So I returned back to Vancouver, and again, I said I had a really good support system, so my friends there did support me. And at one point, I was walking down Davie Street, and I came across a Clean Sober Proud party, and it was right beside the Shoppers. Sorry if we haven't been to Vancouver and don't know. But I was just blown away. I was flabbergasted. What was this? This is amazing. This is such a great idea. And that's when I decided that I was on my way home to Winnipeg. I had stopped in Vancouver, and that's when I decided that I was going to take this idea back with me to Winnipeg. I was going to get back involved in the LGBT community, get back involved with Pride, and help spread the idea that sober spaces are a viable and necessary option for our community. Clean Sober Proud, the idea gave me the confidence to be able to attend Pride. Even if you're not going to the event itself, just kind of knowing that the event is there and available for you. Like I said, I want to assist in creating these spaces. Now, when I returned to Winnipeg, I did join the Winnipeg Pride Board, and it does take time for you to learn the organization and stuff like that, so we're not quite there yet. Maybe coming on up in this year, we will see if some networking works out, which I really hope it does. And it's also important to know that many of us want sober spaces, not necessarily just because we need to be sober, but a lot of people like sober spaces. There's a sober event here in the hotel, in the games room, in the Oak Room, which is absolutely amazing. So what did I realize? Sober spaces are required for Prides to be inclusive. You can enjoy Pride sober. Seriously, trust me, you really can. Yeah, you can participate in Pride sober and have the same positive experience. It was really hard when I showed you those photos of me and the body paint and stuff like that, to be able to go out there and dance. That was such a huge fear. How am I ever going to be able to dance again if I don't drink? When I was in Athens last October for Interpride, I met a group of guys, and we decided that we were going to go out dancing late. And I was like, this is amazing, awesome. I'd already gone to circuit parties in Vancouver and been sober the whole time and stuff. I had no fear anymore of being able to be true to myself. We go back to a hotel room so they can have a couple drinks before we go out, and they offered me one, and I said, well, no, thank you, I'm okay. No, just have one. And I was like, no, I'm okay. And one of the fellows said, "Oh, how long have you been sober for?" I said, "Well, about 6 years at this point." And you could kind of feel a shift in the room a bit. So I had to remind them, I'm still the same person you met 2 hours ago, and I'll still be the same person at the end of the night. The only real difference is that I'm gonna wake up tomorrow and remember everything you guys did and bug you about it. All right, well, thank you very much for listening. We're going to turn it over to Giuseppe and the practical component. Cheers.
Okay, thank you, that was amazing. All right, we're good with the camera?
Yeah.
All right, perfect. Hi everyone, thank you very much. My name is Giuseppe Ganci. I'm the Director of Community Development for LastDoorRecovery Society, which is a nonprofit charity in New Westminster, BC, the Metro Vancouver area, and it provides addiction treatment services for youth, adults, and families. We've been around since 1984, and one of the unknown facts about LastDoor that a lot of people don't know is it was started by a drag queen, one of the founders. His name was Jim. Jim no longer is with us, but I'm sure Jim right now would be very pleased with where we've gone to and have gotten to. So this is also for Jim out there. And I'm also going to invite Andrea, who will say a few words. Andrea?
Oh, I'm saying it right now.
Just
Okay.
introducing yourself. Yeah.
Hello for anyone I haven't met yet. I'm Andrea Arnott. I'm the Executive Director at Vancouver Pride Society and work with Giuseppe every year on our sober spaces and sober event. I'm also on the board of FCP, so if anyone has any questions or feedback, I'm always happy to hear that from you too. And I'll speak about why this initiative is important to Vancouver Pride in a little bit.
Awesome. Thank you, Andrea. I'd also like to make an acknowledgement that we're on Treaty 4 lands in Métis Midship Nation, so I'd like to acknowledge that as well. All right, the history and why we are here. So my lived experience as a youth at Pride, I remember being in my late teens. I went to a large city for Pride for the first time, and I had a couple small goals: get drunk, get high, and get laid. And I accomplished that very well, because back then I had long curly black hair, and I was 18, and I did it really good. And I thought, I've accomplished it. And not that it wasn't there, I'm not saying that other options weren't available back then, but I just didn't see the idea of sober, substance-free. I didn't see any of it, and that's my personal experience. I didn't know really anything else. I grew up in a bar. I started going to bars when I was 15. Back then, you didn't really need ID to get in anywhere, and those were my peers. Another reason why we're here is the LGBTQ2S community has 20 to 30 times more rates of substance use disorders compared to the whole population. Crystal meth, silent epidemic, alcohol, no one talks about it anymore. And so definitely education and awareness needs to be out there to address the social and health issues. I had a light bulb moment. I was in a small town. I was on a work trip. I went to a 12-step mutual support meeting, and somebody had recognized me from Facebook and said, "Hey, I'm on the so-and-so Pride Committee, and we see what you do out in Vancouver, but we just can't get it going here." And I just thought, I never thought of that. Maybe other people want to know how to do this and so forth. So I came back to Vancouver. I called Andrea right away and I said, "Hey, this is what happened." And Andrea told me about this conference. And so now we're here. We submitted an abstract. And I guess this is the next phase of Clean, Sober, and Proud. So in 2007, so from that young kid that went to Toronto, to a large city pride, to now I'm in Vancouver, it's 2007. Somehow I ended up in rehab. So I had a pretty good career drinking and using. And I went to rehab, and I would call it early recovery. One of my friends here, Alessandro, was there with me at the time. And I think the first one, I can't remember, but I think it was the first one too. You were there, yes. And we went to the parade, and it was our first time sober at Vancouver Pride. And we sat there, we go to the parade, and we have all this fun, and we're like, wow, this was the best time, and everything's great. But in the corner of your eye, you kind of see your old friends that you used with, and you kind of like see the invitations for the parties, and next thing you know, the parade was done, and we're like looking at each other, and we're all like very new in recovery, and there was this feeling of like, now what? And everything was in the beer gardens. Well, there was other stuff, but like I said, we were new in early recovery. We just didn't see what else there was. All we saw was parties and bars and bathhouses and everything else that goes along with it. And we didn't see the other side of Pride. And even though it was there, we just didn't see it. And so we went home. And we had this feeling of like, Pride's not for us anymore. Like the parade was fun, but I'm triggered as heck. I'm going to a meeting, and I don't know, there was just this sense of like kind of grief and loss and mad and anger, and like I didn't know. And I knew that if I didn't leave, I had a high chance of getting myself in trouble because the triggers were pretty real. I wanted to go be the cool kid and go to the bar. And not this presentation by no, if you can have, you know, cocktails and party and cocaine on Pride Day, by all, like, go ahead. Use safely, don't use it alone, be smart. But this by no, if that's how you celebrate Pride any way, which way you want. It's just for me, it was different now. So 1 year later, this was an accident. 1 year later, it's 2008, we're like still in recovery, it's a year later, we're like, let's put a float in the parade. And so we bugged my friend, we're like, can we have your truck? And we got like a helium tank and like put way too many balloons on it. We didn't have a name, we had nothing. This was just an idea. We just wanted to have fun at Pride Day. That's all it was. There was, I think, 9 of us there, and nobody, like, what were we doing? We had no idea what we were doing. We just wanted to have fun. We wanted to do a different experience from the year before. Our peers in recovery said, if you want to be part of something, change it. And we're like, okay, with that little tiny idea, this happened. After that day, the setting up, the tearing down and everything, that feeling of Pride wasn't ours anymore, was kind of lifted, and we're like, we could do this. And we had fun, and it was a positive experience. So kicking off Clean, Sober, and Proud, off of that energy of that float, what we decided to do was put a call out on social media. Social media back then was just kind of being that networking tool, and we created a committee. I now was working at LastDoorRecovery Society in community development, and had to get buy-in from LastDoor as a nonprofit, because our donors donate and they know what we do, so we had to get our board involved, and you know, there's risk management and there's branding and there's everything that goes along when you gather groups of people. And LastDoor, we needed the ability to have a structure, and we didn't have the ability to create a nonprofit at being a year in recovery. And so we decided to have LastDoor be part of Clean, Sober, and Proud, but make it inclusive of anybody that wanted to be part of it. And we had to talk to Vancouver Pride. And I'll be honest with you, the very first request we had with Vancouver Pride was not successful. There was no, I wouldn't say there was no interest. I would say they didn't know what we were asking for, and we didn't know what we were asking for. We kind of was just like, hey, can we do something together? And nobody knew what that could look like, and we didn't even know what that could look like. So we continued to make these committees where 20, 30 people from all the community was invited, and we created the word Clean, Sober, and Proud, and went with it. So where are we at now? Now we are at 3 main functions. We're going to add a 4th now after today, public speaking. But where we're at right now is we've got a Pride Parade recovery float. We have recovery outreach booths, at Lower Mainland Metro Vancouver Prides. We do about 5 or 6 of them, and we do this festival called Intoxicated, which is on Pride Day. So these are our floats. What started off with 9 people has now turned into mega floats. It's people in recovery, allies of recovery, family members of people in recovery. There's a committee just for the building of the float. It's alumni from our treatment center. But we really do our best at making this inclusive to the entire community. So I don't give the exact number how many people participate in our float because the parade people are here, so you all know what that means. But we have a large contingent with the float. We have marchers from the whole diverse community that marches with us. Our outreach booths, very important. So our outreach booths, they're coat checks, bag checks for people in recovery. They're places where we pull out couch and people hang out. We have free water. So the recovery community can go to a Pride event, they see us, and if they're anxious or they're like just feeling awkward, they can just hang out with us and just sit with us. They can volunteer with us and they can just be there, and we do beads by donation and we do a raffle that helps us raise money to subsidize the cost of Intoxicated and Clean, Sober, and Proud. So some people come to us because they just want beads. I'm telling you, beads are like unbelievable. They just want beads. But then every once in a while, it's like, hey, my brother, my sister, my husband, my partner, my wife. And then you get into those conversations. And it's the other way. It's like, hey, I saw you here last year, I had no idea, and now I'm like 4 months in recovery. And you're just like, makes the whole thing all worth it. We also have an interactive component. We do a memorial tree. We partner with Recovery Day BC, and we set the memorial tree up at 2 Vancouver Pride events that may expand to other cities this year. But it's an actual art installation. It's a giant iron tree, and those are all names of people that have passed away from the overdose crisis. So we go to public events, we set it up, and people stop, and they just look, and they're just, when you see all that, there's a couple thousand names on this tree now, and the person right here on the top left, that's Donnie. He was one of the founders of Clean, Sober, Proud, the very first float. And so he'd be pretty pleased where we're at today now too. And Donnie's up there.
Excuse me, can I ask, do you hang on to those?
Yes.
So they can reattach?
Yeah, we reattach. Well, what we do is we have some strings along the side for new names to go on, and the lower branches of the tree are empty, and the top lip, so nobody has to climb ladders and stuff. So, for example, all of these are new names that people add on to it. And it just gives people that moment that, they're just walking by and they're just like, oh, what's this? And they're like, just that remembrance and that conversation, like, hey, like, there's fentanyl out there, be careful. And then this is the Intoxicated event that we partner with Vancouver Pride on. This started off about 7 years ago. And one of my biggest dreams when this whole idea started was to have the words clean, sober, and proud, or something that has to do with recovery in the village on the main street, not in a church basement, not off to the side. Like a lot of cities have recovery dances, but they're usually somewhere else. And so this is Davie and Thurlow. This was last year, thousands of people. And so that 18-year-old kid that's going to Pride for his first time with those goals of getting drunk and getting high and getting laid might accidentally stumble on the idea like, hey, like you don't have to if you don't want to. You know what I mean? You can eat if you want to, but there's other ways, and you can party on Pride Day without the use of drugs. Just a conversation. So we needed Vancouver Pride to get to where we're at today. And what we've done is we've become a community partner with Pride. And I'm going to let Andrea talk a little bit about that.
Okay. Oh, I have to stand in the filming spot.
Yeah, right about here.
Right here, this is my zone. Okay. Yeah, good. Thanks, Doug. I started at Vancouver Pride in 2016, not knowing what I was really getting into, taking on the leadership of a larger Pride organization. I did know that I wanted to make changes, and so we've been engaged in community consultation continuously for the last 4 years. And we want to make Vancouver Pride accessible for everyone and where people see themselves represented. So whether that's creating a cutie BIPOC event, advisory councils, creating better accessibility for physical access needs, but also having sober space for people who need it. And I loved it in, was it 2017? Our Davie Street party was just a giant 15,000 people drinking all over the street shit show party, to be honest. And in the middle of it, Giuseppe created this beautiful sober space with chandeliers and sofas and rugs, and it was an amazing space to be in. And so someone could be in the middle of this alcohol-fueled party on the street and have that space to be in and still feel like they were celebrating Pride. So really important for us to have Giuseppe and his crew at our events on our festival site, having their booth, doing that outreach, and then having the visibility of that intoxicated event on Sunday night of Pride weekend in Davie Village is a huge, I think, beacon for people who need to see that. And like Giuseppe said, maybe someone's partying now, maybe a year from now, they can't anymore, and they've seen that, and they know that that's available. So for us, it's a huge opportunity for people to feel like I can see myself at Pride, I can celebrate in a fun way, I can be with everyone else, having a great time. So really encourage you, like we have a huge event, and lots happening. Start small with a fun, sober space at your festival site. It takes a 10 by 10 pop-up, some fun furniture, and hand out water. At least that's a start, so it doesn't have to be a ginormous intoxicated event where we're flying in famous drag queens and having that big event, but just start small so that people have that opportunity.
Thank you, Andrea. And I want to thank Vancouver Pride for taking the initiative, because they had to get buy-in too, because like she said, we're at Davie and Thurlow. I mean, that's prime real estate on Pride Day in one of the largest cities in Canada. And here we are, a small nonprofit throwing a substance-free event, and thousands of people, foot traffic, and the thousands are walking by, but it's the commitment to the social and health issues of people. And so I want to applaud you, Andrea, and your entire team for that. Challenges. It hasn't been all rainbows. So when we started doing this, there was the anonymity clause in recovery, and it was quite interesting. I had no idea. I actually was quite shocked. People didn't want to come to Intoxicated or Clean, Sober, and Proud that were in recovery, because they didn't want people to know they were in recovery. I was just like, what? And then there was people that, very common, I leave town on Pride. Pride's not for me anymore. It's too much of a drinking fest. I get triggered, I leave town. It was we did our first Intoxicated, we couldn't even give tickets away. We had 80 people. Most people with long-term recovery were they didn't even know what it was for, they didn't think it was important, they just didn't come. And then there was the past lived experience of people that went to Pride, got loaded at Pride, so they never went back to Pride. How do you change that as a culture? And we're talking like life and death situations for people that are addicted to drugs. Money. Who was going to pay for all this? So, I mean, I had permission to do stuff from LastDoorRecovery Society, but as a nonprofit, we can't be spending all this money on Pride. So we had to do fundraising. And fundraising, if you think fundraising for Pride is difficult, try imagining fundraising for recovery-oriented events. It's almost impossible. Every time you ask somebody for money and you mention the word recovery, they think of addiction. They don't think of recovery. So it's almost impossible to get funding. So we had to sell a lot of beads. And we had to get our stakeholders to buy into it. And so that was a major challenge. And then who is this even for? So there was, in the very beginning, there was some controversy, which you will get to in your home community. Well, we don't like the word clean. We don't like the word sober. where's harm reduction in this? Is this for substance users? We get emails, I still use drugs, can I go to your events? And the answer is, of course you can. It's now turned into everybody comes and everybody is welcome, but we didn't lose our mission. It's for people that are in recovery. It's for recovery people to have a safe space during Pride. Everybody that wants to be an ally is more than welcome to come. And I think because of that, we were able to grow because the recovery community had to build trust with us, that they were safe if they came to our events, that they felt like we were going to respect their substance-free lifestyle. And we do, and we did, and now we're having thousands of people participate. And it's a beautiful thing. I can't tell you how many hugs and tears and cries. It's pretty emotional at the end of Pride. It's very exciting, but people are just like, Pride's mine again. And for somebody that's, in their 40s and 50s, they got sober when they were 30, that hasn't been to Pride for 10, 15 years, for them to go to Pride again, it's a pretty big accomplishment. So an action plan. So I definitely want everybody here to walk away with an idea of how can we do this in our community? So that very first float with the mega balloons and the 9 people, 50 balloons per person, the energy of that day is the same energy that we had last year with thousands of people. It's the same energy. It's the same energy when I have somebody come up to our float or our booth at Nanaimo Pride, Victoria Pride, or Eastside Pride, and just have that conversation. I need help. What do you think? That's the energy. So you don't need the giant intoxicated. So one thing that you definitely need to figure out and have dialogue is, what are your community needs? How big is your community? What's the size of the community? What's the temperature of the community? Who are your stakeholders? So for us, we've been lucky enough, and I work at LastDoor, and LastDoor supports it. We partner with other nonprofits as well, so they can participate in March and the Float and so forth. So who is that organization? Because we don't expect Vancouver, when we asked Vancouver Pride many years ago to help us, and they said no, it's because they're not in recovery. They don't know how to organize a recovery event. And so we had to figure out how to organize it, have the recovery community organize it, and become a partner of Pride. And it works. And so that's why you need an organization, because we have to get insurance and we have to have money, and you can't rent a sound system if you don't have a credit card and all that kind of stuff. So we had to figure out who that stakeholder was going to be and what their mission is. And so help your community find that, and find your champions. Who is that champion in your city? Each recovery community has their own activities committees, and so who are they? And talk to them. And this isn't a 12-step event. This is a treatment-neutral conversation. And it's not AA, it's not NA, it's not any of the A's. It's just recovery. And ask them and have that conversation. Call me, and I can talk to them, because there'll be that traditions conversation. We're not breaking any traditions. We're just doing a recovery event. And so there's those champions that you need to find, because if the event's for people in recovery, you need the recovery community there. And so we really do our best at including the recovery community in all our conversations. Your thoughts, questions? Yes?
Congratulations, thank you so much for this talk. My question is around
Sure, you need the microphone. Alessandra, do you mind? Just hold it, being our... Check 1, 2.
Thank you, merci. My question is around now what sponsorship looks like. So do you have, obviously you would have non-alcoholic beverage offerings beyond just bottled water. So what does that sort of look like? What, as an attendee, what does it look like? And then also as a sponsor, who have you approached? What sort of roadblocks have you gone into? Are you talking like union sponsorship, bank sponsorship, liquor sponsorship in terms of harm reduction? Just, can you walk me through that a little bit?
Yes. So at the very beginning, we had one challenge was the Pride poster was our main poster with us in the middle, but the bottom of the poster was all liquor companies. And so we had a discussion after that year. We said we're going to have to just use the top banner, but we're gonna have to get rid of the bottom banner. And so that was a conversation that we were able to have and successful, because we didn't want liquor establishments to sponsor our event. We do get some money from Pride. They do give us some money. They also, you give us some money, but they also waive the fees for us to have outreach booths at their events. So we do Eastside Pride, we do Sunset Beach, we do Picnic in the Park, Pride Premiere. So that helps us have our booths there. And then we do go out and ask for sponsors for our event. So our event is, what's the word I'm looking for? It's like a sub-event within Pride. Even though Pride's our partner and it's under the umbrella of Pride, it's actually our own event. And so TD doesn't sponsor our event, but we acknowledge TD sponsoring Pride at our event because that's what waives our fees for all our conferences. And we were able to get TELUS is a major sponsor of our event, and they sponsor our event for the last 3 years. And we were able to get TELUS as a sponsor because we're a sub-event, where they're not sponsoring Vancouver Pride, they're sponsoring Intoxicated. And there's a pretty clear line on that. And then the rest of the money really comes from our Beads by Donation and raffle. Like we only have 2 sponsors. TELUS, Vancouver Pride comes on board, and then hotels give us good rates, so we have all that. Like I said, fundraising, I also chair Recovery Day BC, and we get lots of support from the community, but when it comes to presenting sponsors, we have none. Like 0. Yeah. It's pretty sad, actually. Yes. Yeah, microphone.
Okay, thank you, McWedge. Also, I'm from a very rural community in Southern Ontario, and we do not have a healthy recovery community in the slightest, and especially as a youth, I've been it's very inaccessible. Where do I start?
Really, at one tent, the words, recovery, sober, whatever it is that you want to identify as, and a couple of waters, a couple of candies, and just like starting a meeting, it just takes a couple of people. And I know the images of these large events, but really it started with just a couple of people and with no real support from anybody. And I really believe that that's the beauty of all this, is it's community driven. And if it's you and 2 of your friends, the next year it'll be 6, and then it'll just grow and grow and grow. But we do small outreach booths at small Pride events. Where we go to Fraser Valley Pride, it's a few, I think they get a couple thousand people at their event, but it's still one of the smaller ones. And it's just 3 of us in a tent and beads. And just that conversation. But what's really important with our outreach booth is you make it welcoming for people to join you. It's not just here's a pamphlet, it's hey, come on in. And that's why we deliberately have that pull-out couch, so people can hang out with us and so forth. And sometimes we don't even know them and they don't talk, they just sit. Yeah, which is great too. Yeah.
Hi, Adam from
Hi,
Halifax
Adam.
Pride. I'm just wondering, are you around for the next day or 2? I think I'd love to have a little sit-down chat with you.
I'm leaving in a couple hours. I have an event in Victoria tomorrow.
Okay.
Yeah, I'm sorry.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you.
You can ask me questions too.
Yeah, Andrea, Alessandro as well. I just want to give a shout out to Alessandro, our microphone MC. Alessandro, after this question, if you want to say anything, please come. Okay? Yes. Question.
Hi, I'm Doug from Toronto. On a personal note, just as someone who struggled with alcohol and drugs for many years and has been sober for the last 3, I really, your story, Colin, really touched my heart. And I really think what you're doing is saving lives. I really believe from a public health perspective, this is critical for our communities, because there is a higher rate of addiction and drug use, and I really worry about young people, and it's so important, so thank you. I guess a question, just a logistical question, is what do you do when people, I guess in Toronto, it's sort of in the corner, it's not a really good space, so I love the centrality of it. So it feels like a part of the party. But what do you do when people are trying to push their way in, or if they're belligerent, or if they're high, or they're dangerous, like safety issues? How do you balance?
Yeah.
What do you do with that?
Okay, so here's a little fun fact. This last year, Intoxicated was on Davie and Thurlow. For 2 years, it was on Butte. And on Butte, if anybody's familiar with the neighborhood, the liquor store was stage left, and a marijuana store was stage right.
Yep.
And it even made part of the act, because the MCs on stage were like, because they could totally see the liquor store and totally see the marijuana store. And people, that was a topic at our committees, like, we can't do it on Butte, there's a liquor store there. And I said, this event is to be in people's faces, and so we decided we're gonna push forward, and we need to deal with our triggers, and we need to be in the city. We can't hide anymore in church basements. This isn't Alcoholics Anonymous. This is for everybody. And so we persevered, and we had our events, and some people didn't like it, but most liked it, and it's also, we really had nowhere else to go. That was the only space that we could do for those 2 years. So having the liquor store and the marijuana store so close, if you're an alcoholic or an addict, the liquor store could be 2 miles away. You're still gonna go there and use. So we really wanted to push forward and have people experience the city and experience it in a safe environment with their peers. What we do for security when we're on Davie Street, for example, there is the issue of people that are using substances. We open the doors to everyone. If someone is behaving in a way that's dangerous to others, then we will ask them to leave, because it is a gated area and we have the right to do that. But if somebody is drinking and there's, outside of the space and then coming in and is not interfering with somebody else's space, then we're okay with that. And we also believe, and this is my recovery background, I'm never going to kick anybody out of a meeting because they're high. I mean, this is the best place for somebody to be in for them, because it might inspire them and it might not, but at least we're doing our best. So there is no, there's a sign that says no drinking, no using, no vaping. There's a sign, but there's no, major guards at the door, and it's like, you look drunk, you can't come in. No, we make it very welcoming.
So,
Alex, over here. Yeah. That way you're on camera. Yes.
Yes, star.
Yes.
So, my name's Alessandro. I'm president of Nanaimo Pride.
Right here.
Right here. 13 years ago, I had the opportunity to go to LastDoor and get clean, and I've been clean since. And I was one of those people on that first recovery float in 2008. And for somebody who, when I turned 19 and I came out, and I found the gay party scene, and I didn't leave. I spent 14 years in the gay party scene. And yeah, I mean, I'm not gonna get into the details and stuff, but I knew I had to do something, and if it wasn't for my mom who dropped me off in treatment, I wouldn't be here, and I wouldn't be alive. And for me to, get involved with Giuseppe and Donnie and all these guys, and being gay men in recovery, it was really hard for us, and it was hard for me. I was highly triggered, and I felt like there was no place for me being in recovery and celebrating Pride. And so, to look now and see how far this has come really fills my heart. And like you said, this is for people like Donnie. He passed away, and we don't want other people to pass away, and we want people to be able to come to Pride celebrations and feel included. And that's why we've started having conversations with Giuseppe about bringing it to Nanaimo. We'll see what happens, but Nanaimo's been devastated by the opioid crisis. You see it in the streets everywhere. We try our best, and yeah, I just, I want to make sure that this is successful, and it's right across the country, and every gay man, woman, transgender person gets an opportunity to celebrate Pride and remember it and build those memories, because I can tell you in recovery I've had way better memories than I did in my addiction, and I've been able to do a lot of great stuff and travel around the world and celebrate recovery at different conventions and do it clean and be able to meet people, and I would have never thought that first day when I came into recovery, and to be able to stand here with Giuseppe, yeah, right, 13 years later is pretty amazing, and I just, I want to thank Giuseppe, and I want to thank Andrea and Vancouver Pride, because they've led the way, and there's no reason that this can't happen anywhere else or everywhere else. So, thanks.
Thank you. Thank you. Does anyone else have, do you have a question? And you have a question? Okay, well, I think he was first, so we'll go over here. Thank you. I know.
Thank you. Yeah, it's not so much a question as a comment. I'm a non-drinker, but I'm not in recovery. And for me, this is a fun space, because it's not fun being the one who hasn't had a drink and you have everybody shit-faced around you. So this is the sort of place that I would go to have fun, to be able to have a laugh, to dance, and not be surrounded by people that either are on substances or alcohol. So thank you. Even if it's not necessarily geared towards me, it's meeting my needs. Thank you.
Yeah, I mean, that's one, we stayed true to being a substance-free event that's open to everyone, and I've gone to a lot of events during Pride throughout the years. We've got, because of the show, we've got all ages, so it's an environment where there's people in their early teens to not in their early teens, and the diverse crowd, that's the best way of saying it, sorry, my age, and we all feel welcome and included and so forth, so we're really proud of that. Yes.
Hi there, thanks so much. Patrick, he, him, Halifax Pride, also queer in recovery. Halifax Pride lands on a time where the sort of recovery community in the area have a camp out, and it was kind of put in place at that time because the queers felt it was safer to be out of town at this camping event, okay? So that's a huge bulk of recovery folk. And also, what we've tried to do a couple of initiatives last year, and in the past, of course, and I think that the stigma around it prevents other people who may not be as comfortable kind of outing themselves as being in recovery. So there's sort of this weird gray area of, is it recruiting folks who are in recovery, or is it getting sort of allyship and starting the party that way? Oh,
it's full-on recruiting, like full-on recruiting, yeah. In the beginning, it was just like me going to my friends in recovery, like, I mean, you're not supposed to take things personally, but I was like, why didn't you come? And it's just like, well, I leave town, or I don't, like, I go to the clubs, I don't want people to see me, and you're doing it out on the street, and, you know, people are gonna see me, and it was just so weird. It was like me talking to my straight friends a long time ago. It's like, oh, I'm not gonna go to Pride, people are gonna think I'm gay, and it's just like, it was the exact same conversation. It was just different situations, but the conversation was the same. And so it was full on recruiting, and that's why it started off small. The first one was like 80 people. The second one was, I think we had 100. With the second one we did, definitely was less than 200 people, and it just kept on growing because people would see other people doing it, and then people that didn't have substance use issues, that just didn't drink or didn't want to be at a party, were starting to come. And so now, if you look at the crowd of intoxicated, it's not like, oh, he's the addict and she's the alcoholic and he does crystal meth, and it's just people. And when you're on this, but it took us 8 years to get there. And it may take you 8 years, it may take you longer. I go to Halifax in September for Recovery Month. We do Recovery Month Canada, we do conferences and support recovery days. Halifax is having its first Recovery Day this year on September 12th, and that's coming up. You know Jules? Yeah. I met Jules last year. So this is how this all happens. Halifax has never had a Recovery Day. We took the energy of our recovery community in the Lower Mainland and brought it to Nova Scotia in September, and we inspired some people, and they formed their own Recovery Day committee. And it's the same conversation, and it's a movement that really started out of Vancouver Pride. And it's okay to recover out loud. It's okay to go to an event that has sober people at it. Oh my God, you won't catch it, don't worry. But it was all these conversations that you're talking about. It's real issues. And I would literally just recruit and ask them to move the date. Let's make Pride ours again. And there's, in Vancouver, there's these two conventions. They're both in recovery. One is, I'll just use the words, one is a straight conference and one is a gay conference on the same day. They were fighting for years, and now they finally agreed to move one of them. And so now they're both going to grow. And so there's no harm in saying, let's move this camp out to another day. And let's make Pride ours again. Right?
See you in September.
Yes, see you in September. I'll be there. Colin, do you want any closing notes, or?
I don't know. It was all really good. Yeah. Thanks so much, everyone. Again, definitely what Luke said, I think, was really important about people knowing that they can have this space and they don't need to be in recovery. It is for everybody, so that's great. And maybe just in regards to sponsorship as well, the way that Pride Winnipeg works is, again, our community events are housed under the Pride banner, so you can find independent sponsors for that. And maybe a nice little fun thing to do is you can compete sponsors against each other, so if they can't get into the main festival, you could say, well, we have this other event that you could sponsor, so they can still have their branding there, but you just need to keep your eye on your contracts and how they're written and everything, so, yeah. Thank you very much.
Andrea?
I'm good.
Okay, thank you everyone very much.
Thank you both so much. Those important conversations.